The scene shifts to the mermaid finally being defeated, and our boy is the last one standing, looking down on her. The mermaid tries to move, but Kang decides to put her out of her misery and slashes her head off, finally ending the fight. Meanwhile, Batten and Rachel are stunned to witness a freshman single-handedly defeat a demon, but then Kang coughs out blood and collapses. Seeing this, Rachel runs towards Kang, while Batten checks on Leon to see if he is fine. At that moment, Batten senses movement near the entrance of the cave and worries that the mermen have returned, but he is relieved to see that it's Abel and her team. They are shocked to see the defeated mermaid's remains. Meanwhile, Abel sees Rachel hugging Kang and gets jealous. She looks at Leon and thinks the team leader could have died, but it looks like he made it out alive. She tells them she has contacted the academy and that they are on their way. She then asks what happened here. Batten curses the instructors for sending them to this shitty island, but Abel just asks him to explain. Batten starts to explain everything from the start, and Abel concludes that the mermaid came out of nowhere and that Kang defeated it alone. She asks him for confirmation, and Batten confirms that everything is true. Abel reflects on her past when her grandfather used to tell her stories about heroes and finds it hard to believe that a freshman from the academy defeated a demon on his own, whereas she was a descendant of a hero's bloodline and did her best to come this far. But Kang always makes her feel like an ordinary person. She then instructs her teammate to use her healing blessing on Kang. As her teammate uses her blessing to heal our boy, Abel observes him and thinks that even though he looks like he could kick the bucket at any time, she thinks he is the same age as her. Yet, he defeated a Demonoid alone and won. She continues to glare at our boy, but Batten comes in and reminds Abel that she mentioned contacting the academy earlier. Abel confirms this. Batten then suggests that for now, it might be better not to tell everything in detail, and Abel asks him why. Batten suspects something doesn't add up because the instructors said they scouted this island beforehand, yet despite that, a Demonoid was present in the cave. Leon asks Batten if he suspects there's someone from the demon faction within the academy, and Batten says he didn't mean that, but there is a possibility of that happening. Abel reflects on the situation. If it weren't for Kang, Leon's group would have been wiped out by the Demonoid. Still, Abel wonders how such a thing could have happened. While there have been conflicts, both major and minor, during the 700-year truce, they never targeted cadets of the academy. She thinks they might be looking for a justification for another war. Batten then tells Rachel he knows what she is thinking, but it's best not to think too much. He says there could be a possibility of a spy in the academy, but it's too soon for any conclusions. Leon then speaks up, saying that if that's the case, they might become a target since Kang defeated the Demonoid. Baton agrees to keep this a secret, considering everything Kang has done for them. Hearing that, Abel suggests, why don't they try speaking to her grandfather first? The scene shifts to the academy's hospital, where Kang regains consciousness and sees that he still didn't kick the bucket. He recalls the mermaid's final attack, which could not be dodged, but somehow he was able to see a line and sever the magic with his sashimi knife. He wonders what that sensation was. When he activated the blessing, he was able to feel things he could not describe. He then opens the blessing window and notices that his mental fortitude has increased and his assimilation rate reached 7.2%. Kang wonders whether this skill unlocked when he sliced through the mermaid's magic. At that moment, Media bursts into the room, throws herself toward Kang, and hugs him tightly, saying she was worried for him. Meanwhile, our boy is suffocating. What a lucky guy. Media then pulls out a dimensional pocket and presents Kang's reward for the midterm exams, the legendary weapon, Murasame. Our boy is surprised to see the sword, and Media says that she hopes Kang likes it. She apologizes for giving him the sword in such a place, saying that he should have received it more officially. Suddenly, Media notices someone at the door. She says, "Come in, you old geezer." And we see Siegfried, who tells her to stop calling him that. As both of them stand in front of him, Kang feels deja vu and asks, "What brings the Sword Emperor here?" Media tells Kang that they have heard everything from his teammates and apologizes to him for their carelessness. They are to blame for what happened during the midterm exams. Because of this incident, Kang, his teammates, and all the students nearly lost their lives. Media swears on her honor to uncover the truth behind the incident. Siegfried tells our boy that he saved the cadets. Hearing this, Kang replies that he only did what he could. Media explains that while Kang's actions were nothing short of remarkable, they need to keep this incident a secret until they find out who is behind it. She apologizes to Kang for this situation. Our boy replies that he understands the situation. Hearing this, Media says says he should act like a kid and throw a tantrum or two sometimes. The scene then shifts outside, where Media and Siegfried are walking through a corridor. Media suddenly stops and asks Siegfried if he remembers the day they first met after enrolling. Siegfried was lying on a bench outside, and when Media told him to stop being lazy, he drew his sword without a word, telling her not to order him around. Siegfried replies that he doesn't remember that. Media smiles, saying it feels like it happened just yesterday, yet she has already spent 60 years here. She finds it laughable how she hasn't even filled a tenth of the Academy's history. Back when both she and Siegfried enrolled, the place was already ancient and full of history. Although there have been large and small incidents over the centuries, the Academy has nurtured and protected its cadets for 700 years. Suddenly, Media becomes angry and unleashes her aura, shattering the window in front of her. Media recalls that before the midterms, she received reports that the instructors completed multiple preliminary surveys of the island. Even if it was rare, the island was known as a place where mermaids might appear, so she took every precaution. Yet, the tragedy still occurred. Siegfried tries to calm Media down. Media apologizes, saying she was lost in thought, and Siegfried looks at her with a serious expression. But then, Media shifts her mood and starts to simp for Kang, saying he was able to take down the mermaid all by himself and asking Siegfried what he thinks. Siegfried wonders if Kang is a genius and whether he could reach the place he once dreamed of. As Siegfried walks away from Media, he tells her to stay put at the academy for now. The scene shifts to the wolf class, where our boy is sitting in class. Kang thinks about how the incident with the Demonoid mermaid on the island is being kept secret under the headmaster's instructions. He finds it a bit awkward, but perhaps his classmates are carefree because he stopped the mermaid. After being discharged, the first thing Kang did was visit the school's forge to reshape and enhance his new weapon. The blacksmith tells Kang to retrieve his sword 1 week later, and since it's the 700th anniversary event, he won't charge any money. Kang thinks he got lucky and hopes the enhancement will be successful. Then Chloe comes in and asks Kang how he is feeling. Our boy replies that he's fine and asks about her condition. Chloe says she injured her leg, but thanks to emergency treatment from Batten, the doctor said she'll be able to walk within a week. Kang asks if there has been anything unusual, and Chloe replies that she heard the director and the elders have been at odds. Kang reflects on how everyone did their best defeating the mermaid, but he wonders why Leon didn't do jack shit. He also wonders how he will defeat the Demon King. At that moment, Instructor Lee enters and tells the students to stop what they're doing. He has an announcement to make. He says there will be someone co-instructing with him, and everyone in the wolf class is surprised to see Siegfried walk into the class. The students wonder why the Sword Emperor would be their instructor. Kang, on the other hand, is shocked and thinks, what is that old geezer doing here? The scene then shifts to an underground location where we see a guy absolutely getting cooked by an instructor. She tells him that the 5th Corps commander is pissed. She further kicks his ass and says she is disappointed for not bringing Leon back, making him out of reach for capture. She scolds him for failing, even with the mermaid's help. The guy says that it was all done by a single student. He was this year's top student. His name is Kang. Hearing this, the instructor is surprised and smirks, thinking things are getting exciting. She leaves with a sussy expression. The scene shifts to the training grounds, where Instructor Lee is running alongside the students, acting like a drill sergeant and yelling at them to run faster. Meanwhile, Chloe is sitting on a bench, waving at Kang with a smile. Seeing her resting, our boy feels jealous. Just then, Siegfried approaches Kang from behind and tells him to pick up the pace. Kang wonders why this guy is running with them. According to the game, Siegfried is supposed to become one of the strongest characters and the master of Leon during the Second Demon War. Kang thinks, why the hell is he even here? Just go back to Leon. He recalls that Leon never actually received the Sword Saint title, but he couldn't care less, because now the old man is running beside him like David Goggins. Siegfried shares his knowledge about the importance of physical conditioning and tells Kang to keep up. Our boy painfully says yes, while Siegfried effortlessly runs ahead, telling Kang to keep up with him. And our boy wonders if this guy is aging backward. After the run, Siegfried dumps a pile of weapons on the ground and tells the students to pick one to master. Our boy hopes there's a sashimi knife in the pile. At that moment, one student raises his hand and argues that it's best to use weapons they are already familiar with for long-term effectiveness. Hearing this, Siegfried counters that the basics are more important than anything else. Relying too much on high-grade weapons can make students neglect their training, making them mistake a weapon weapon's power for their own strength. The same student insists that learning how to use advanced weapons properly is also important. However, Siegfried shuts him down, stating, "Nothing matters when you lack skills." Then, he delivers our boy's punchline: "A true master never blames his equipment." Hearing this, Kong nods in agreement, thinking, this is 100% true. Siegfried explains that once the students master the basics, they will naturally become comfortable with any weapon. He also reveals that students who can master ordinary weapons will receive high scores in the promotion evaluation. Upon hearing this, all the students rush toward the pile and start grabbing weapons. Meanwhile, Kang thinks Siegfried does have a way with words. He always thought of Siegfried as Medea's punching bag. Our boy then notices a Walmart knife and picks it up. Siegfried announces that the students will have one-on-one sparring sessions without the use of subspace. The students are surprised, asking if they might get hurt. Siegfried tells them to grow up, reminding them that they joined the academy to become warriors. He explains that true growth comes through combat, even when facing the risk of defeat. However, understanding their concerns, he reassures them that he will personally give a demonstration. Hearing this, the students get hyped at the opportunity to witness the legendary Sword Emperor in action. Instructor Lee, however, steps in, telling them to be silent. Meanwhile, Instructor Lee is internally pissing himself at the thought of facing the Sword Emperor. Just as Lee is about to say something, Siegfried calls out for Kang to step forward. Hearing this, the students say, "Our boy is screwed, but at least they can witness the legendary Sword Emperor." Meanwhile, Kang is still thinking about what to do when Siegfried asks if his injuries have fully healed. Kang replies that he is fine now. Siegfried then instructs him to pick up his sword. Our boy can't help but think that even though this is just a sparring match, it feels like too much. His condition may have improved, but his opponent is none other than the Sword Emperor. Crossing swords with someone of Siegfried's caliber wouldn't end easily. One of them is bound to get hurt. Kang wonders if this craving for a fight is due to the influence of divine power, but instead of giving in, he takes a step back and tells Siegfried that he is nothing compared to him, asking him to lower his sword. The students behind him mock him, saying he will lose no matter what. Siegfried then questions if Kang has no pride as a swordsman and tells him to stop hiding his power. This makes Kang reflect on his past. In his world, he held the title of the greatest swordsman in the country. That pride, along with his determination, has been the driving force behind why he never put down his sword. He realizes that Siegfried is deliberately provoking him. If he falls for it, he may regret it for a long time. Yet he still has a choice. With everyone watching him, Kang finally agrees and tells Siegfried he will learn from him. As the two stand face to face, their swords drawn, ready for combat, Siegfried recalls a vivid memory from his own past, the moment when he gained enlightenment through the sword. He remembers when he was not yet mature, but had witnessed a one-armed wandering knight demonstrating unparalleled swordsmanship. Ever since the allocation test, he has been keeping an eye on Kang, hoping to find a clue that would lead him to that same enlightenment. As the duel begins, Siegfried strikes first, but Kang effortlessly dodges and appears behind him. Siegfried immediately senses his position and swings his sword in his direction, only for Kang to parry it. Siegfried notices that Kang's attacks are bold. He charges in head-on without avoiding. The two continue exchanging strikes, but surprisingly, Kang pushes Siegfried back. Fired up, Siegfried says his sword is not light and continues to strike him. Meanwhile, the students wonder why the Sword Emperor is being so careful with Kang. They get even more confused when both of them suddenly stand still. Instructor Lee observes the scene and recalls Siegfried saying that he won't cross real swords with Kang, and he only intended to see if Kang can enter the mental realm. As they continue to face off, Siegfried watches Kang take his stance and is impressed. He then activates his sword, Spirit. Protection. His aura surges and intermediates everyone nearby, and both of them charge toward each other. Seeing this, Instructor Lee tries to stop them, but just before they can reach each other, Media intervenes and smashes the ground, screaming at Siegfried, saying, "What the hell is he doing to a student?" The scene shifts to Media's office, where she is still furious with Siegfried. A few moments earlier, Media grabs his collar and screams at him for pulling that crap on a student. After Media stopped Siegfried, the students had started to worry. Siegfried tried to explain, saying he never intended to escalate the fight, but as he turned to look at Kang, he realized how he had lost control and exerted his full aura. Media calls out to Siegfried, saying, "Has he gone deaf?" Siegfried turns to to her, and he apologizes to her again. Back in Media's office, she reflects on how, in over 50 years, she has never heard Siegfried say sorry, yet today he has apologized not once, but twice. She asks him why he unleashed his sword spirit on a student and what could have happened if she hadn't stepped in. Siegfried replies that if he hadn't used the blessing, he wouldn't have been able to gain the upper hand. Media is stunned. Siegfried is a man full of pride, and for him to admit such a thing is almost unimaginable. She knows Kang is talented, but she also knows better than anyone just how strong Siegfried truly is. Then, Siegfried reveals that Kang has already reached the mental realm. Hearing this, Media is shocked because it took Siegfried nearly 30 years to master it, and now he's saying a 17-year-old has achieved it and says that doesn't make any sense. Siegfried, still deep in thought, admits that he still doesn't understand. There's something that can offset experience. This leaves Media even more confused as she begins to think about Kang. When she had stopped Siegfried and approached Kang to check if he was okay, the only thing she had felt in that moment was fear. It was the same fear she had experienced when she first met the 6th Division commander. She wonders why such an eerie feeling came from Kang. Turning to Siegfried, she asks bluntly, "Did you lose?" Siegfried is flustered and says, "There's no way that could be true. Even if Kang is talented, there's no way I'd lose. Besides, I wasn't even fully armed during our duel." Media smirks and says why he is overreacting when he is who said, "A true master never blame their equipment," and teases him for making excuses, and hearing that Siegfried gets pissed. The scene shifts to Kang's room, where he wakes up from his dream of the duel. He thinks it ended well, though he also thinks the Sword Emperor is quite hot-headed. Reflecting on what happened, he realizes that if Media hadn't intervened, things could have gone wrong. Kang begins to reflect on the concept of the mental realm. It feels strange to him. It's a power that can only be manifested by a master who has honed a single weapon their entire life. Even in the game, the protagonist Leon took 3 years and needed Siegfried's guidance to master it, but Kang wonders why he was able to do it right away. He thinks if it's because he spent 20 years using a sashimi knife in his previous life, and every time he unleashes the sword spirit's blessing, he experiences a level of concentration that transcends normal perception. And now, his past experience is starting to intertwine with his current life. Our boy decides to test it out, and he unsheathes his blade. As he begins to focus, the surroundings start to shift. The world itself shatters. Suddenly, a hand emerges, touching his shoulder, and the aura of the blessing begins to flow into his hand. However, our boy is shocked to see as the sword turns to dust and disappears completely. The scene shifts to a building where the elders have gathered. They are discussing the recent demon incident, and one of them insists that they need to investigate Kang. Another elder questions whether Kang might be a candidate for the hero, but she dismisses it, saying, "Isn't the true hero candidate Leon?" The elders continue arguing, debating their responsibility to maintain power within the academy. It is their duty to ensure that the hero candidate faces the demon lord. Finally, the higher elder speaks, instructing them to issue orders to the Auditore family. The scene then shifts to our boy, who is pissed, and he's scaring the blacksmith because the man somehow turned his brand new B-rank weapon into a sashimi knife, turning it into an E-rank weapon.